By noon, the cul-de-sac looked like a brochure. Pop-up canopies sprayed shade across the grass, folding chairs nested in neat rows, and a rented bounce house exhaled and re-inflated above the sprinkler heads like a stubborn lung. Strangers dragged coolers over my edging bricks and staked fluorescent pennants into the turf line I trim every Saturday. A caterer backed a van until the rear wheels kissed my walkway. Someone taped a laminated arrow to my mailbox and called it park entrance. It took minutes for the first patch of lawn to mash into green pulp, for the flower beds to gather shoe prints, for the mulch to migrate into pebbled paths nobody asked me to provide. The story on the sidewalk was that the HOA had launched a community picnic. The newsletter's pastel map showed a cheerful green blob, labeled Common Green, floating exactly over my parcel. Visitors behaved with the confidence of people who believed they belonged. The board president, a woman the neighborhood privately called a force of nature and publicly called Karen, swept the scene like a parade marshal, greeting families while pointing toward my hose spigot as if it were a public utility. By late afternoon, the canopies coughed down, wagons rattled away, and my yard looked like the morning after a concert. Tire marks, confetti napkins, a constellation of bottle caps, a gouge through the zinnias. The only official trace left behind was a sign zip-tied to my fence announcing, "Thank you for supporting our HOA." 2 days later, the HOA left a pink envelope in my mailbox. The subject line called it, "Non-compliance." The body assessed fines for landscape deterioration, unapproved signage removal, and failure to maintain the appearance of community space. The last line promised a hearing, as if I had vandalized property that the HOA mistakenly believed it owned. I walked the boundary with my plat map, traced the iron pins with a magnet, and felt the old weight of the deed in my hands. The board wanted a park. What they had was my lawn. The break came when I unfolded the newsletter map and saw the error crowned in clip art, smiling as if truth could be shaded with pastel. The next move would not be about grass. It would be about paper. The city clerk knew the drill. The tone of municipal email headers never changes. I filed public records requests for every permit tied to the picnic: park use, street occupancy, food service, amplified sound. I mirrored it with a homeowner's statutory request to the HOA for board emails, vendor contracts, and the newsletter artwork source file. The city's queue took days to disgorge, but the HOA's response arrived in a hurry, thick with redactions that looked like someone had blacked out a crossword with a marker and called it confidentiality. My own archive told a cleaner story. The door camera had swallowed the entire arrival. Rental trucks nosing across the easement. A volunteer twisting a stake into the corner where the Bermuda transitions to fescue. A child tugging on the hose handle while an adult cheered the arc as if it were a fountain. Timestamps layered into a chronology. Across the street, a neighbor's porch cam captured the president directing the setup, gesturing broadly at lines that only the survey understood. When the city's PDFs finally landed, one detail hummed like a power line. The picnic permit application listed Community Green Lot 44 as the location. The parcel number was mine. The accompanying site plan, exported from the same software template as our newsletter, floated the label over my yard as if property law were a movable sticker. The clerk added a note. The park did not exist in the park's inventory. The application had been filed as a neighborhood gathering, with no fee and no insurance rider. The HOA production contained a vendor invoice addressed to the association, with delivery instructions to my street number. A separate line item reimbursed MISCA facilitation, coded to a discretionary community engagement budget that nobody recalled voting to create. The board's internal calendar reflected a planning call held in private, outside the regular meeting schedule. On the back of the hearing notice, the fine schedule stacked like steps to nowhere, dollar amounts marching upward with each supposed day of non-compliance. I printed the plat, the permit, the invoice, and the video stills until the stack had the heft of a statement. The last page I added was the covenant section that defines common area by meets and bounds. The HOA's park lived only in a JPEG. Evidence makes an interesting sound when it clicks together. Quieter than drama, louder than rumor. A turf report from a local arborist documented compacted soil, crushed stolons, and a sprinkler head bent 2 degrees off true. The estimate to remediate fit neatly beside the fines. a mirror image of cost and accusation. The city clerk followed up to say the picnic's sound notification did not satisfy ordinance language, since it referenced a non-existent public space. Liability, the email implied without flourish, would not fall on municipal shoulders. I added the HOA's design file for the newsletter map after metadata revealed a dragging motion across a background layer. The cheerful green shape had been pulled over my parcel like a blanket. The board's redactions hid commentary but not timestamps. The planning string predated any public agenda by weeks. A separate vendor quote revealed that the bounce house company normally required proof of insured premises. In this case, the line was marked, "Waived by organizer." I posted a matter-of-fact thread in the community group, attaching documents with captions limited to dates and functions. No adjectives, no accusations, just the map, the permit, the invoice, the plat, and the silent sequence of setup. The comments split along familiar fault lines. Those who feel rules hold the world together and those who think exceptions grease it. Meanwhile, a fresh notice from the HOA scheduled a disciplinary hearing, inviting me to appear and explain my non-compliance. I declined the theater and chose procedure. The bylaws outlined a recall mechanism, rarely used, easy to ignore until it wakes. Quorum percentages, petition language, ballot secrecy, neutral moderators. There it all sat, simple and stubborn. I built a packet that would survive shouting, cover page with parcel boundaries, tabbed sections for each exhibit, a one-page summary written like an invoice for truth. The HOA attorney sent a letter that read like a raised eyebrow, gesturing toward defamation and confidentiality. The statutes did not bend in that direction. The city's final note clarified the permit's status. Void if premises do not match inventory. No indemnity filed. The stack on my desk now had teeth, and the calendar on my wall had a new circle. Doorbells are easier than debates. I carried the recall petition down both sides of the block, then down the next one, turning porches into small, quiet town halls. People remembered fines for mailbox heights, paint swatches rejected for being too similar, and a citation for a flag that someone decided counted as signage. I showed them the map that pretended my lawn was a park, the permit that pretended the park existed, and the invoice that pretended nobody would notice the address. The signatures added up like rainfall in a gauge, slow, steady, undeniably cumulative. The bylaws demanded a percentage and a paper trail. I double-counted every name, cross-checked lot numbers, and filed the petition with proof of service the way a clerk would admire. The board was required to notice a special meeting for recall. They obliged, perhaps believing that momentum would evaporate in a room under fluorescent lights. I booked a neutral parliamentarian to preside over procedural questions and secured a hall camera that could stream in a single, unbroken shot. Open meeting rules welcomed observation. The internet provided amplification. A small local reporter asked for the packet. I sent it, redactions removed, exhibits numbered. The story clipped into a 2-paragraph brief on a neighborhood blog, which turned into shares, which turned into a low-heat buzz. The attorney sent another letter requesting I remove sensitive board communications. The law permitted inspection and reproduction for specified purposes. The specified purpose was now written in our bylaws under removal of directors. The board posted a statement about misunderstandings and efforts to build community. The comments settled like silt. The thread saved itself. In the quiet days before the meeting, I reseeded the gouge in the zinnias and rolled the soil flat. The boundary pins still sat where the surveyors had driven them years ago, cold iron proof that could not be argued out of the ground. On the morning of the recall, I charged batteries, laid out the ballots, and printed extra agendas. The live stream. Link went live 30 minutes early, chat ticking upward in a slow, relentless climb. Procedure would do the shouting for us. The clubhouse smelled faintly of dry erase markers and last year's coffee. Folding chairs formed orderly rows, and the sign-in table became a small factory of pens, proxies, and lot verifications. The parliamentarian opened the meeting in a voice that never raced, setting ground rules the way a metronome sets tempo. The president tried to seat herself at the center. Conflict of interest clauses tucked her to the side. The camera stared from the back wall, a glassy eye that never blinked. Quorum clicked into place with a stack of tally marks and a nod. The floor opened to statements. Homeowners spoke in the slow cadence of people who have edited themselves before printing. A father read from the covenant definition of common area, tracing the language with his finger without looking up. A retiree described being fined for a hairline crack in a driveway, and then receiving an invitation to a picnic on property that wasn't public. The board members watched the live stream chat scroll like weather, little flashes of reaction sparking in the margins. Then the exhibits appeared again, not as screenshots in a thread but as enlarged printouts on an easel, the newsletter map with a pastel blob floating over my lot. The city site plan citing Community Green Lot 44. The vendor invoice, the reimbursement entry coded as Miss C. Facilitation. The email timestamps preceding any posted agenda. The parliamentarian confirmed that documents already circulated to the membership could be referenced. Procedure sanctioned reality. Ballots were distributed. The room settled into the soft rustle of paper and thought. While votes were counted, the city clerk's final email was read into the record. The permit was void as filed. The location was not a listed public facility. Insurance was absent. A quiet passed through the chairs. A kind of civic silence reserved for moments when people realize a line they trusted was drawn in chalk. The totals were delivered to the front table. The numbers met the threshold and stepped beyond it. Directors were recalled. The live stream chat spiked into punctuation. The board attorney placed a hand on a stack of policies that had just turned into a reminder of what comes next. One agenda item remained: electing replacements. Interim directors were seated with the wary posture of people who know paperwork can wound as efficiently as politics. The first motions were housekeeping with teeth. Rescind the fines for my so-called non-compliance. Direct reimbursement for lawn remediation. Adopt a hard policy forbidding the depiction of private parcels as common space in any publication, and require third-party permits to name the HOA as licensee only when the premises exist and are insured. Each passed with hands that had learned something. The city clerk closed the loop by updating an internal checklist. No more approvals for parks that live only in clip art. The vendor, relieved to find the ground beneath its paperwork again, refunded a portion of the fee and updated its process to verify sites. The budget line labeled community engagement was dismantled and rebuilt in daylight, with a cap, a vote, and a definition. My yard healed according to the calendar of plants, not people. The reseeded patch stitched green across the scar. The bent sprinkler head clicked back into its arc and stitched water over the edge as if nobody had ever mistaken it for a fountain. The zip tie ghosts vanished from the fence. The iron boundary pins remained, unphotogenic and perfect. The live stream replay traveled faster than any newsletter. People watched the map that couldn't lie and the tally that wouldn't bend. 1 million views stacked in a week. Strangers finding themselves in the story of a line drawn, moved, and redrawn correctly. The comments argued as comments do, but the documents did not change. The recall became a case study in a local civics class, a chapter about how bylaws are not decorative, permits are not stickers, and lawns are not parks because someone shaded them green. The former president, once the picnic's queen, stepped off the board in a broadcast that archived itself before the chairs were folded. She walked past the easel and the camera, and out into a neighborhood that would now require votes for what used to be decided by enthusiasm. The story ended where it should have started. With boundaries, with notice, with consent, the yard became a yard again. The park returned to the inventory of imagination. And on a video that lives forever, the moment of removal plays back in crisp definition, proof that quiet paper can move mountains, that shouting never will.